Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Shra Om Agyantimirandasya Gyana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadha Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Janmadyasya Yatunvayati Tarata Shtarte Shrabhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Redhaya Rati Kavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rastakuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 1. So the Yamadutas are wanting to respond to the questions of the Vishnu Dutas. The Yamadutas were incredulous that the Vishnu Dutas stopped them because they were clearly enlightened entities. And the Vishnu Dutas were incredulous that the Yamadutas were punishing a sinless person, even though they claimed to be followers of Dharmaraj. Yamaraj, who's a great Bhakta, Mahajana of the Supreme Lord. So the Vishnu Dutas thought that actually these fellows are scared of us, they're lying. We should punish them. So to test them, they put forth some questions to the Yamadutas. The first questions were, what is the essence of Dharma and how can it be measured? And what is the essence of Adharma and how can that be measured? So the Vishnu Yamadutas answered those first two questions in the that was it. Answer those first two questions and their first verse. Oops, I think you can see my screen. So they said the essence of, so the passage of the Yamadutas giving response to the Vishnu Dutas is from verse 40 to 55. And then from verse 56 to the end of the chapter is them giving their story, resharing the story of Ajamila to demonstrate that they had indeed made the right decision. So that's how we're breaking out the passages there. So in starting their reply to the first two questions of the Vishnu Dutas, they say that the essence of Dharma is whatever is prescribed in the Vedas. And it can be measured by, following those prescriptions. And the essence of Adharma is, doing what's forbidden in the Vedas, and it's measured by those transgressions. These Vedas are directly the Supreme Lord Narayana because they come from his breathing. They are the unauthored words of God, which also sounds like oxymoron, or it's a paradox. The unauthored words of God. So they are called the Swayambhu. They've heard this from Yamaraj. That's what we started discussing yesterday. Otherwise, it's not possible to know this as such. You'll come up with some theory. Vedas are about this many thousand years old. They first appeared in so-and-so BC. Like the scholars, they speculate. So this could only be known by hearing from the Mahajana Iti Shushushama. So this Supreme Lord, from his own abode, has generated the bodies of the living entities through his Maya Shakti, composed of 3 gunas of nature. So according to those gunas of nature, Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas, then you get certain qualities such as peacefulness, and you're designated in a certain way, such as Brahmana. You have certain activities that are prescribed for you, such as study of the Vedas. You have certain form. Varnashram was the meaning of this word form. Anyway, a certain form is there. So the rules of the Vedas pertain to the imposition of the body, basically. So that's the idea of these two connections. Okay, so that's where we left off yesterday. So they continue. When you perform actions, there are many witnesses. Suryagni kam murudheva soma sandhya hanidisha kamku swayam dharma iti hete dahyasya sakshina. So the sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and Supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entity. So some people think that they can, not some people, all people think, including ourselves. We think that when we're, as I like to say, trying to get the cookie, we think that we're clever and we're not going to get caught with our hand in a cookie jar. Every child thinks like that. Every foolish person thinks, we all think like that, actually. But if we want to do something, some transgression, then we'll do it stealthily. Clandestinely, no one will know that we are doing it. But here, this verse is saying that there are many witnesses to the activities. So there's no question of you not being caught red-handed in some transgression of Dharma or in the acts of a Dharma. Everyone is being witnessed at every moment without smartphone. We are very much uncomfortable. Actually, humanity has been lulled into comfort, but it is basically known at this point, it is obvious at this point even, that we're constantly under surveillance by corporations and likely big governments also through our phones, but we're not disturbed by that. Still, we try to do the activities even under the surveillance of such unkind entities. So we're also constantly under surveillance. So there's no question of doing something in stealth. In Prabhupada's purport, he mentions how he talks to some scholars in Christianity, and they were against the concept of karma. So one of their arguments is that, okay, if there is a witness of the activity, then that witness can tell that you've done this activity, then you get the punishment. But in the case of karma, you're getting reactions for past life activities, and there are no witnesses to that. So it's not fair that you're getting those reactions. So which Prabhupada is saying here in the purport, what do you mean? There's no lack of witnesses. There's so many witnesses there. Therefore, there's no question of getting out of the clandestinely transgressing the edicts of Vedas or Dharma. Okay, next verse. So the candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses to have deviated from the prescribed regulative duties. So this is one of the questions. Who's the person suitable for punishment? Well, the person suitable for punishment are those who are confirmed by these witnesses as having done a dharma. So that question is now answered here. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. Sarve karma anurodhena danda arhanti karina. So one of their questions was also, what is the scope of punishment? Is everyone punishable? Like, are only certain people punishable? What is the scope of punishment? So here he's saying, Sarve karma anurodhena. So karma anurodhena means in consideration of the karma performed, sarve, everyone is potentially punishable. It is in accordance with the activity that's performed. Dandam arhanti karina. Everyone deserves to be punished according to their activity, karinaha. According to the sort of activity you perform, then you deserve to be punished. But okay, so the scope is, the reason is taken into account. So karma anurodhena. What is examined is this sort of activity. And if you have done some transgression, then you'll be punished. That is what is generally called as justice. Nowadays, they're changing the definition of everything, but justice is generally like this. You've done this particular wrong activity, then you get the punishment. Okay, next verse. So they want to elaborate on this, why everyone actually becomes, worthy or deserves punishment. in this world. Sabhavanti hi bhadrani viparitani cha anaga. Karinam gunasango asti dehavana hi akarmakrit. So, all inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka, you are sinless, anaga. So you are sinless. Ontologically speaking, you are anaga. So you may not be knowing about this. But those within this material world are all karmis. Karinam. Karinam means the person who performs goal-oriented activities to get some goal for enjoyment. That's called karina. So everyone in this world, they're all karmis, whether acting piously or impiously. So sambhavanti hi bhadrani viparitani. So sometimes our acting bhadrani means doing the pious activities, and viparitani means just the opposite, doing the sinful activities. But they're all karmis, whether they're doing pious activities or sinful activities, they're all karmis. So you should know that. Both kinds of action are possible for them because they are contaminated by the three modes of nature and must act accordingly. So guna sangha asti. So because there is guna sangha, they're able to act in both ways. So this is explaining why everyone is basically deserving of punishment, because they are karmis acting under the influence of the gunas. Guna sangha asti, because there is guna sangha. Therefore, all sorts of activities are possible for them. Just like you see here in the material world, when someone does some wrong activity, all the living entities be acting all shocked and stuff like, oh my God, I can't believe that they did that. And I'm always just like, well, nowadays, and having grown a little bit older, and I'd like to think a little bit wiser, maybe that's my delusion, but I like to think that. I'm like, why are y'all acting shocked? Like literally any one of us could do that given the right circumstances. Just ask yourself the question, what circumstances in life you would have to be under in order to do something like murder? Like most of us, I would take for granted, aren't homicidal people. We don't think about murdering people, but that doesn't mean we're incapable of murder. Just because we think that, just because we are not murderers in our thinking doesn't mean we're incapable of it. And so the living entities, we act like we're incapable of certain activities. Like, I would never do something like that. What do you mean you would never do something like that? What conditions would you have to be under in order for you to take someone's life? Ask yourself that question. And then you can see, oh yeah, okay, given this sort of circumstances, I probably could do something like that. So that means this entity was under some circumstances, that subjectively for him gave rise to that sort of tendency. So all activities are possible for everyone because we're under the influence of the gunas of nature. Nothing is impossible for us. Therefore, we have to be very careful when we pass the judgment. Srila Dharma, Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, and in that wonderful book, Sri Guru and His Grace, he writes that when we approach God, we should only approach the mercy department. He says, I'm only interested in approaching the mercy department because I do not know what is in me. I always really appreciated that statement. And if God has to judge me according to my merit and demerit in this life and that life, who knows what sort of situation I'll get. Therefore, I'm not approaching the justice department. I am approaching the mercy department. I always very much appreciated that statement from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Because we are guna sangasi, because there is the association of the gunas of nature, all activities are possible for us, both inauspicious and auspicious. So if we get the result of the acts that we perform, that's what justice is. And because all activities are possible for us, so we also become worthy of punishment at certain times or in certain circumstances. So this is just the nature of the material world. Everyone more or less deserves punishment because they've been associating with the gunas for a long time. Purusha pakriti stohi, mungte pakriti janguna, karanam guna sangasya sarasayoni jamasu. Because of this karanam guna sangasya, because of this sangha with the gunas, they're meeting with good and evil, or auspicious and inauspicious situations in their life, auspicious and inauspicious bodies in their life. So most important, in terms of our humility factor, humility nourishes bhakti. Bhakti cannot grow without the humility. So this verse should make us all very humble, because we are always in the association of the gunas. That is default setting for the conditioned souls. We have been associating with the gunas beginninglessly. Daiviyesha gunamayi mamamaya dharataya. And these gunas are very powerful. So as long as we're under the gunas, anything's possible for us. We can do anything. Crazy also. Everyone was freaking out over Donald Trump, for 4 years, this, that, and the other thing, crying all the time, crying. And I used to, sometimes I have my friends here in New York, they have liberal politics. So they will also sometimes bring it up, Trump this, Trump that. So I would ask the question sometimes. I said, if you were in his position, do you think you will remain incorruptible? Are you such a pure soul that if you had that much power, money, and influence, that you can really honestly say that you would not become corrupted by that? Who is that soul who can honestly say that in the conditioned stage of life? Hardly anyone. Not hardly anyone, no one. You have to be beyond gunas of nature to avoid that. So in this way, this is explaining the scope. So as long as you associate with the gunas, you are worthy of punishment. Okay, when you're doing goodness activities, you're in the clear, but you're not going to always be doing goodness activities. So someone may say, well, what if you just don't do anything? So then the last line is there. Dehavan nahi akarmakrit. No, because you have a material body, you got to do something. As Krishna says in the Gita also, what is that verse from Gita 3:5? I actually never learned. Well, I did learn this verse a long time ago, 2014. What is this verse from 3:5? I forget how it goes. I think it's 3:5. Yeah. Nahi kashtik shanamapi.
Nahi kashtit shanamapi
jatu
tishtati akarmakrit.
Not even for a moment can a person not do something. Karyate hyavasha karma. He is helplessly forced to act. Sarva pakriti jaya gunai. He is helplessly forced to act according to his pakriti jaya. Pakriti jaya means the nature born of the gunas. Pakriti jaya gunai. You're forced. So if you're in tamagun, you're forced to act by laying down all day. So you may say, I am not doing anything. No, you are doing something. You're laying down all day. Maybe you're watching the YouTube or Netflix, or just moping and sulking in the bed until the sheets turn dirty. So that is also an action. It is not a very inspiring one, but it is also an activity. So Bhagavati Jaragunai, because you're in Tamagun, so you're acting that way. Or in passion, you act in another way, and then goodness, you act in another way. So Karyate Yavasha Karma Sarva Pakrita Jaraguna. Everyone helplessly acting according to their nature. Krishna will later on say in this chapter, also verse 33, that even a man of knowledge, what to speak of the ignoramuses that comprises most of the material world, but even the man of knowledge, Ganavanapi, even the man of knowledge acts helplessly according to his swabhava. Even that person is acting helplessly. So everyone has, so there's no question of I'll not act. So someone says you don't do anything. Dehavani ha akarmakrit. No, you have a body. That's what I mentioned yesterday. The body is the fundamental imposition. So from that fundamental imposition, all the other impositions are also connected. You can't get out of it. So dehavan nahi akarmakrit. Because of the imposition of the material body, you cannot not do something. You will do something according to the gunas that comprise your nature. You'll be forced to act accordingly. So in this way, the scope of punishment becomes everybody. That is the scope of punishment. This is not, well, I don't know how this doctrine really is taught in Christianity, nor is I'm sure if there's even a standard way of thinking about it. But it sounds not too dissimilar from the idea of original sin, which most people hate that idea because it's like Adam eats the apple and we all got to suffer for that. But the idea of original sin is not too different from the concept of anadi, Buddha. being bound beginninglessly, like from the start without beginning, you are, messed up, compromised. Doesn't sound too different to me. If you look at it, maybe like essentially. So here you have it, you original sin or the apple thing, you're forced to act in so many ways. How to get out of this situation? So that's this. The Yamadutas will indicate at the end of the sequence. Maybe I'll pull it up at the end of the class, which is about to be very soon because I have to go. I have a podcast this morning at 9:30, so I have to cut things a little short today. Okay, next verse. So Yena yavan yata dharmo veda samihita sa eva tapalambungte tata tavara mutravai. So in proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious actions in this life, so one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of his karma in the next. So one of the questions was, how is punishment administered? Right? That was also one of the questions. So this verse is answering the question. How is punishment administered? Well, to the person who does some activity, yena, the extent of the sinful activity performed, the manner in which she performed the activity, adharma. Yena yavan yata adharma. So this is talking about adharma. So the person, the activity, the manner in which it was performed. So dharma veha samihita, iha means in this life. So according to how he is acting in this particular life, he performed the adharma or the dharma, religious or irreligious acts. Sareva tapalam bungte, then he will enjoy tapalam, that fruit, tata tavara mutravai, to that degree at the time of death or in the next life of mutravai. So very straightforward. We all know this concept of karma. This is how the punishment is administered. Very clear. What is the difficulty in understanding? Okay, do they switch gears here? I think they switch gears here. So that's kind of an answer to the first questions that were asked by the Vishnu Dutas. Now they want to speak about some of the other metaphysics that underpins conditioned activities in this life. So we'll look at a few of these verses maybe. Let's see. So, O best of the demigods, Deva Pravaras, we can see three different varieties of life, which are due to the contamination of the three modes of nature. So the living entities are thus known as peaceful, that's probably in goodness, restless in passion, and foolish in ignorance, as happy and goodness, unhappy and passion, or in between, or as religious, irreligious, and semi-religious. So, yeah, yata iha deva pravaras trividyam upalabhyate. So just as in this life, you can see trividyam upalabhyate. You can see that there are three like categories. It says there are three kinds of attributes are achieved. So good, bad, and mixed, basically. That's how the commentators speak about it. So you'll see a religious person, a sinful person, and then a mixed person, religious and sinful. So you can see these three existing now. You can see it in a person's makeup. If you look at them now, you can see, oh, they're a religious person or they're irreligious person, or they're kind of a mixture between. So bhuteshu guna vaichitrat. So there's this diversity amongst the living entities in these three categories. So similarly, anyatra anumiyate. It is inferred in other places that this is also going on. So in other words, we can deduce that in the next life, these three kinds of material natures will similarly act. By looking at a person's nature now, you can make out what his nature was before and what his nature might be like in the future. That's the idea here. If you see that a person is sinful, has sinful behaviors now, you can make out that, oh, he's cultivated this previously. That's why he is like this now. And if he continues to act in this way now, then he'll be like that in the future. So that's how you can basically make the prediction. Now people are going to the psychics for the prediction. Here in New York City, the psychic business is like popular. I don't know how this is the case because, I think psychic thing will be against Christianity and people are largely secular here, but somehow it's like a business. You can even find big psychic stores on Fifth Avenue, which is like the shopping center in New York City. So no need to go to the psychic. You just need to be good at the philosophy. Just by looking at the nature now, it is indicated what their nature was in the past and in the future. You can infer it. Tata anyatra anumiyate. It can be inferred. Okay? So next verse, they give an example of this. Just as springtime in the present indicates the nature of springtime in the past and future. So this life of happiness, distress, or mixture both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. Vartamano anyoya kalo gunabikyapako. So you just look at the kala means the time at present. So in the commentaries, it mentions springtime. You look at the nature of spring now, you can understand what spring was like in the past and what spring will be like in the future. So similarly, the conglomerate of dharma and adharma that is seen now in a person's mentality, you can understand that mixture was like that in the past, and the future will also be like that because of the present activity. So very straightforward ideas here, nothing too confusing. All right, a little bit more here. So the omnipotent Yamaraj is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart, like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of a living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives. So the last two verses was how you might infer someone is worthy of punishment, or, well, you can infer their nature and where they're going. But Yamaraj here can know it directly. He doesn't have to infer it. By direct perception, he can understand, and therefore he can award the punishment precisely because he has direct perception. Manasaiva pure deva purva rupam vipashyati. So he can see vipashyati, or he can completely observe with his mind the purvam rupam, the past religious or religious activities of the living entities. And so he can, in consideration of that, he can give the punishment directly. Manasa Bhagavanaja. He is like Bhagavan, or very powerful, and Aja means unborn, like Lord Brahma. So the previous verse was like how it can be inferred, but Yamaraj doesn't have to infer. He can directly perceive. And we're being sent by that Yamaraj who can directly perceive the activity. So, or we're under his jurisdiction or his auspices. Therefore, we're taking this ajna. That's what they want to say there. Okay. I'm gonna pause for a second and see what's going on in this chat box, because I don't have that much time today, as I already mentioned, because of my podcast is hitting a little earlier today. Okay, so there was just a comment about the Christianity, which I have no idea about, so no comment there as such. Does anyone want to ask anything, or maybe before moving on, should we?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Yes, so we are helpless because of our attachment to the modes, so the defense against being so helpless is chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah, why not? That's a good suggestion.
Okay, no, yeah, I like simple, so that works.
The idea is the jiva satashta shakti, right? So we are always under the influence either of Maya Shakti, not mostly Maya Shakti. And for those fortunate jivas who get Bhakti Sangha, then the internal energy comes into their life. So we're more or less helpless either way, you can say, but we're especially helpless under Maya Shakti. So how to counteract that? We have to do association with God or the internal energy. So actually the Yamadutas themselves will indicate this at the end of this passage, which is verse 55. They say this thing. It's such a nice verse, actually, because we heard the problem is guna sangha, right? So then they use this word isha sangha. Esha pakriti sangena purushasha viparyaya. So because of this pakriti sangha, the purusha is viparya. They're in a state of inauspiciousness. Asit sad eva nachira isha sangha viliyate. But by isha sangha, they can viliyate, means they can relinquish this problem, destroy this problem, and not too very quickly. Nachira means not taking a long time. They can come out of this. It says, since the living entity is associated with material nature, he is in an awkward position. Tell me about it. But if the human form of life, he is taught how to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, this position can be overcome. So they kind of indicated there.
Oh, what verse was that?
That is 6155. That's the end of the passage here of their giving answers to Yamadutas. So it's such a very nice verse. So we said their guna sangha is a problem, so you should do isha sangha or sadhu sangha. Then our helplessness can be overturned. Otherwise not. We're very helpless.
So if we are currently chanting Hare Krishna, but we're still feeling helpless, is it that we need to just give it more time? And of course, more chanting is always helpful, but
yeah,
is it also
more chanting? Likely just more sangha. You know, if we're really not getting that juice from our bhakti, maybe we need to make a little adjustment. Move to the dham or move amongst sadhus where there's more intensification of the heat of bhakti. We like, what is this statement? I don't know this statement, but I know my Guru Maharaj was fond of saying this many times, that be either hot or cold, but if you are lukewarm, I spit you out. Some statement in the Bible, I guess, from Jesus. So I think a lot of us do that, like lukewarm bhakti, because it's kind of like, ooh, it feels good, it's kind of comfortable. So if we're not getting the results we like, then maybe we need to intensify. But that intensification not really possible without the influence of sadhu sangha, a lot of it. And I'm talking about living with devotees. You know, you're waking up early, doing sangha throughout the day, hearing only Krishna stories, not hearing or talking so many other things. You know, and it should be better. Why not?
I was also thinking when you're talking about approaching the mercy department versus the justice department, you know, when I look back on my own life, you know, my sinful activities have been, you know, on the surreal level, you know, and so and that's what I can remember, you know, in this life. So I can't even imagine, you know. So yeah, I'm definitely on the line in the mercy department.
Most definitely. I would forget that Justice Department. The Justice Department is ghetto, dude. I'm going to the Mercy Department. Excuse me, where's the Mercy Department? Right.
Yeah. Oh, so, just who are you doing your podcast with today?
No, this is just the Arise one we're doing. I always live stream it. It comes on the Facebook and YouTube and so on. This is not the Wisdom of the Sages one or anything like that.
No, I know. But I mean, you usually have guests on Arise, no?
Yeah, today we're doing it with Deva Madhava Prabhu. Should be a little fun. We're talking about how important are externals to the identity of a bhakta, like to helping us generate the identity of a bhakta. It was based on some beef that Karuna Avatar got into, so it should be a little fun. Hopefully, let's see.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have some in the comment section. In verse 48, translation, last statement, why is it said that we should know how living entity will act in future? It's the same we should know. It said it can be inferred. So it's an inference. What does that mean? It's an inference. So isn't the free will of a living entity to transcend the karmic reactions? That's, he potentially can do that if he gets the association of God or the devotees. Otherwise, he is helplessly moved by prakriti. That's what we're hearing, right? So for all the jivas that are helplessly moved by prakriti, you can infer their activities. And that's basically how algorithms work, right? If you think about it, that is basically how algorithms are working now with this whole, selling products to the conditioned souls, right? They can't know precisely what we're going to buy, but just by sheer statistics and looking at our previous habits of spending and purchasing, they can infer what it is that we might like, right? And I'm sure you've seen some, I've seen memes like this where it's like when the, Facebook advertisement is suggesting something you only thought about. And you get like nervous, like, wait, I was only thinking about this. I didn't like type it in or anything like that. I was only thinking about it, and now the advertisement is coming for it. So if you think that's how algorithms are also working, it can predict by inference. They cannot know precisely, but by the inference they can make out. So that's what he's saying there. For jivas who are acting under prakriti, prakriti is matter. So because it is material, it what's the word I'm looking for? Because it is material, it lends itself to empirical analysis, even when it's subtle matter, right? That's why they can, to some degree, even with the subtle matter, like dealing with mind and stuff like that, there's some empiricism to it. Some measurement can be made because it's still material. So you can infer. If some soul hypocrisy, you can make out, okay, they're having mentality like this now, so they're likely will continue in the same way with these sorts of activities. That's all that can be inferred. And okay, there's a comment about that. Okay, Athena says she has a comment about that thing.
Hare Krishna, JJP, Dandavats.
Good
to see you. I was thinking about this because when I actually wasn't looking at the screen, if the verse had said, if your nature previously, you can almost predict your nature going forward. And it makes sense from the fact of kind of when it's hard to change one's nature. Or if you've been conditioned in one way, I guess that was really what I was saying, like your past scars, like if you're stealing or you're sinful, you're just going to continue into the future. But of course, you would naturally say, well, until one takes to bhakti and then everything can change. But even if you take that aspect out, I mean, you hear a lot of people, and this is, karma as well. Someone was in an accident, like, a family member died, and then their whole lives change, like they have like an epiphany. And so it's almost like, so in one sense, it's, I want to say it's not always true because they're living out their karma. Maybe their karma has been a certain way, say it's been bad, and they're just continuing just like inertia. But it's also within their karma if something, we know if they take to bhakti, it's mercy. But even within karma, something changes. Like even if they meet someone, I don't know, say romantically, all of that can change one's course of action.
Yeah, the idea here is that you're always under the gunas. So like straw and the water, right? So the waves are pushing it this way, and then the waves pushed another way, and then the waves pushed it another way. And like this, it is just helplessly being pushed by the waves. So the living entities, under ignorance, they're being helplessly pushed by the gunas this way and the other way, like that. So yeah, things are always changing. It's the nature of the gunas, right? Change. But they're being pushed this way, the other way, here and there, hither and thither. They're helplessly moved in this way, all of us, by the gunas. So they have one nature you might be able to infer, but then they get hit with another wave that moves in another way. So, okay, my inference was a little bit off there. Now looking at this new wave that's hitting, you may infer it another way.
Thank you.
And so, and we have here in verse 48, okay, I read the part. So the verse that talks about sun, moon, etc., witnesses of living entities' activities, can we infer that they are all agents of Yamaraj, and thus making Yamaraj omnipotent, pervading everywhere? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the verse was just establishing that there are many witnesses, so there's no question of, clandestinely performing some dharmic activity and not getting caught. There are so many witnesses, including the super soul and also Yamaraj, and also the sun, moon, and directions and all these things. I don't know about the second part, if that can be the case. You always said that being a devotee with bad qualities is still better than a materialist with good qualities. Yeah. Because a materialist may have good qualities now because he's under goodness, but soon may exhibit qualities in passion or ignorance, right? So does a devotee not under the modes? So is a devotee not under the modes? No, we are also. Unless one becomes purified completely, even devotee is under the modes, correct? Sure. But he's a devotee. There's a difference. He may be under the modes, but he is a devotee. So that is the difference. Now, there's a big difference. Because to be a devotee means that some Vaishnav has invested in you. And because of that investment, then you also become dear to Krishna, right? Bhaktar Bhakta Janapriya. Not only are my bhaktas dear, Krishna says, but those who are dear to my bhaktas, they are also dear to me. So even you're under the modes, and certainly if you get initiated, then you're kind of in a whole nother category altogether. But in any case, Krishna is involved in the life of such a devotee. So that is a difference. And that is a big difference. So there's a concept coming in marketing. Everyone likes cold tea or hot tea. No one likes lukewarm tea. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I also somehow, sounds like you're saying this is amazing. So I also somehow really like this. I've always really liked this section of the Yamaduta speaking about what they're speaking about, our life in the material world. And some really fire verses are coming, but we'll have to get to those on Monday because I'm going to close out our class now so I can get ready for the next, wave of activity for myself today, which is a lot because I'm behind schedule today. Went to sleep super late last night, got up a little bit later than I needed to, and anxiety. All right. Thanks, y'all. Hariam Tat Sat, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Shri Gaudiya Guru Varga Ki Jai, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, Hare Krishna.